Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And it's a real pleasure for me to welcome you to another version of our CARMA Quick Chat. And you may know that this is the forum in which we take the opportunity to have a conversation with people who are going to be contributing to CARMA. And in this case, I'm going to be talking with one of our CARMA webcast lectures. Before I get into that, if you don't know about CARMA, we are an academic center at Texas Tech University, and our mission is to provide research methods education for doctoral students and faculty. We have several different types of events, including online short courses and workshops, but we also have a lecture series. And so today's guest is going to be presenting in that webcast lecture series in a couple of weeks. Let me invite you to join to learn more about CARMA and how to access the webcast lecture series through our institutional membership program by visiting the CARMA website, karmattu.com. So today it's my pleasure to be chatting with Dr. Sandeep Pillai. Sandeep has just joined the faculty of the Freeman School of Business at Tulane University. He's an alum of the University of Maryland and had been on the faculty at Bocconi University before coming to Tulane not so long ago. So Sandeep, it's great to meet you and great to chat with you. Thanks for fitting your webcast schedule, the lecture into your schedule, and for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yep. So I think there's, for early stage doctoral students and even people outside of the business, they tend to look at faculty and think that they're all alike and that everybody knew what they wanted to do from the beginning. When in fact, the more people you talk to, you learn that for many of us, we take a very kind of indirect route. So how was it with you? How did you end up getting a PhD and becoming an academic?
So definitely my path is very indirect. I did not start with this grand strategy to become a faculty in the business school. So I am originally I'm a reformed engineer. I am an electrical engineer. I did my electrical engineering at the University of Waterloo in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And then I went on to work as an electrical engineer for 7 years. And while I was working as an engineer, the firm that I worked at, which was the Ontario Power Utility, right, Hydro One Networks, they did that high voltage transmission. I was designing transformer stations and all that stuff for a while. They had a program where they would pay to do masters in electrical engineering. So I did masters in electrical engineering, and then I had this idea, maybe I want to go into management at some point. A PhD was not anywhere in the radar. I went into management, and so I decided to go and do an MBA. And I did my MBA at Rotman, and without having any understanding of the faculty pedigree there in terms of research, because they have so many renowned faculty members that we all know of. But as an MBA student, I did not have any appreciation for it. But I got in. It was a good school, so I went. And there, while I was doing my MBA, I had a course with Will Mitchell, the late, unfortunately, great Will Mitchell. And it was actually conversations with Will Mitchell during my MBA days that tuned me into this idea of doing research. Because Will Mitchell had this amazing way of teaching strategy. So he would come and do a 1-week corporate strategy class. And I remember before the class, it was like, oh my God, this guy's going to teach us for 1 week. It's going to be so boring. And then you don't realize that 1 week passed by when Will Mitchell is teaching, because it's just so much knowledge and so much experience. And every time I remember, he would really connect back to his research. Like it's like, when I was in this paper, we were discussing this, and it was very much tied to the real world and research at the same time. And this is when I started wondering, okay, what is this research all about? Because when you do engineering, I mean, you probably have a very international forum. Depending on where you are and the kind of engineering degrees that you take, research is not necessarily a part of your degree program.
Right.
It's a
Right.
very course-based degree program. Even in your master's level, I did a master of engineering. No, unless you're doing a master of science in engineering, you may not necessarily do research, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I did 2 degrees without doing any research. And here there is, and on to my 3rd degree, right, without doing any research. And here is a person who I was just astounded by talking about research and the real world like I've never heard before. So I spoke to him about, and then he kind of, got me interested into this research. And one thing he asked me to do is, look, if this is for you, what you should probably can do is think about doing some sort of RA work or research
Yeah.
project, something with someone. And so I ended up doing some RA work, not with Will Mitchell. He was very busy. He was, there's, Will Mitchell, if you can imagine, there's a queue of PhD students. Okay. I mean, so a
Yeah.
MBA student trying to think about what, that was not exactly, I didn't want to disturb him, quite frankly. But there was a very kind, very nice professor at University of Toronto called Walid Hijazi, who was, he was an international business professor, and he was kind enough to take me on. I explained to him, look, I don't know anything about research, but I would like to know. I would like to do it. He's like, "Look, why don't you come and work for me as an RA?
Mm-hmm.
Then you will get a sense of what research is, and then you can think about what you want to do." And so I started off doing so this was while I was working. So I was working, doing MBA, and then doing RA work. And I really got interested in it. I was very interested in this. And what I realized for the first time, even though I've been working for a while and had been studying for a while, is I could ask a question that I was interested in and just pursue the answer, which
Yeah.
I did not have that. I did not think that was something I was interested in till I actually did it, So it was a little bit, I had to do it to learn that I liked it, right? So that is how I got into research. And then Professor Walid Hijazi in recommended that I apply to the PhD programs. And I specifically, even though he was an economist and international business person, he said that based on the conversations I had and the interests he thought I had at the time, I am more into strategy, fit for strategy. And so I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get admitted to University of Maryland
Yeah.
and be under the training of Brent Goldfarb and David Kirsch there. And I have a wonderful, set of faculty members like Rajshri Agarwal and Sergey Brzezinski, David Vagaspak, Waverly Ding, Christine Beckman, etc., and faculty who trained me, Anil Gupta, who trained me and supported me, and that allowed me to successfully navigate the PhD process and become an academic and become one thing I will say is none of this was planned. I was very lucky to be under people who guided me to get where I am in as an academic, because if Walid Hijazi did not support me, then I wonder what the counterfactual would have been. And even when I went to Maryland, I'll be honest, I knew they have very good faculty, but I did not really have an appreciation for, oh my God, Brent and David are these amazing
Yeah.
historians and these great thinkers, and Rajshri is this legendary industry evolution scholar. That's not how I ended up at Maryland. A lot of people ended up at Maryland knowing all of that. I did not. I just knew they were good and it is a great place and they accepted me. So let's try this. It was a little bit of an adventure for me as well. But then, of course, I was very, very lucky to be in their training, and I ended up becoming an academic, and more importantly, I got a job after PhD, and
An important outcome of that process. Well, that's a great story. So obviously, with that type of background, your math skills were strong. So for many students who start in doctoral programs in management, the math is a challenge of learning statistics and methods. So if it wasn't the math associated with the stat, what was it as you reflect back that kind of were some of the issues that you struggled with, the challenges that you faced as you were learning to think about research methods and how you go about asking research questions?
So let me make this, let me confess, math was very difficult for me. So the thing about when you're doing engineering is that you do a lot of math, right? I've done three-dimensional, 3D vector calculus and vector calculus and
Yeah.
all sorts of things, right? Like, and obviously I survived all of that. That's how you get through the process. And I was one of those engineers who were actually doing math on a regular basis because I was actually working as an engineer in a power systems kind of environment. So I was literally doing math every day, right? Like, so math was okay, but econometrics was not something I had really done before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most engineers don't necessarily do econometrics. And that part was a little difficult. It was a very new way of doing math for me. I remember sitting in my first, we all have that foundational econometrics course. I'm sitting there going, X prime, X, what are we talking about here? Right? And I almost failed that course. Okay. So just to be very clear, I almost failed that course because I just couldn't understand. And I think struggling in that course is the best thing that happened to me in hindsight. I did not think of it then, is that because it forced me to really sit down and it's like, okay, what am I not getting here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
math has always been my strong suit. How come I'm struggling here? Right.
Yeah.
Um, and what I realized is that there was this huge disconnect for me from the papers I'm reading and the math taught in class. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't quite understand how to take that and apply it to my daily research life. Right. So, and
Mm-hmm.
this was a huge struggle for me. I just couldn't grasp it. Okay. So I do OLS. What does the p-value really mean, though?
Mm-hmm.
We keep saying p is 0.05, p is 0.05. What does that really mean? And why should I care about that p? What does that tell me in my context that I'm studying? And it was a huge challenge. It was the biggest challenge I had as my PhD in my PhD program. And and at one point I'm like, oh, maybe I'll become a qualitative scholar. I'm not good at math, so maybe I'll become a qualitative scholar. And I'm like, no, but the questions that I want to ask and the answers that it is mathematics. That's what I'm naturally interested in. So what I did then is, thanks to the support of my advisors, Brent and David, I decided to take another math course. I
Uh-huh.
went and audited a course given by Tim Simcoe at BU. And it was Tim Simcoe's course that really helped me understand. If you don't know, a lot of the Boston schools, they go and take Tim Simcoe's course. Tim Simcoe has this amazing course. And I encourage everybody to look at Tim Simcoe's website, where he has this thing about how you should present data, etc. So it's a very nice checklist for people. And that really helped me understand, okay, this is what we're talking about. This is why we care about the 95% confidence interval. This is how you represent data.
Mm-hmm.
And then the problem of taking Tim Simcoe's course is you take that course and then you read the papers. You're like, wait a minute, this is not what our papers are doing. Tim's papers are doing it, but most of the papers we are reading, this is not what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where I really, this was a challenge. And then, my way of fighting that challenge was really embracing it and taking another course in a different university. And what happened, the one good thing, other than me being interested in stats, is Maryland recognized this issue. And then Maryland went on to start what is now called the best methods course
Oh,
ever. That is the official title of the course, by the way.
I
So,
know about this
yeah.
course.
So I was the first RA for that course. I was sorry, first TA for that course because the course was a little bit out of my experience at Maryland.
Yeah.
Then my experience going to Tim and me coming and telling Brent, this is not working. We need a course that helps people understand how to actually apply many of these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, it's a good. I think a sort of a summary of your lesson, and this is what I found to be true, is that there is more to statistics than just math. And you
yes.
can know how to do the math,
Yeah.
but if you don't understand kind of the concepts and how they all fit together
Right.
in this system,
Right.
then you can get the answer right, but you don't know have any idea what you're doing.
Exactly. So,
So
Stata will give you an answer, but what does that even mean?
yeah,
It,
yeah,
and the irony of all of this is just to take just one more second is,
sure.
when I went to Bocconi, Alfonso Gambardella, who was my department chair, he asked me to actually teach econometrics to students. And I was teaching the master's elective course in econometrics. And, you know, it really helped me. I would say my experience made me a better econometrics teacher just because I knew what their struggles were. I would start off by saying, look, I'm going to help you understand this. This is
Uh-huh.
not threatening. I am going to try to interpret this and teach you in plain English what is going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think a little bit I gained that skill to some degree because of the challenges and failures I had in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then also when I was talking to, I did the interview earlier, a quick chat with Richard Landers, our other presenter, and he was talking about the teaching, and you really when you have to explain things to somebody else, that's what really forces
Yeah,
you
it really forced you
to
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 learn.
understand it. So then tell us about your particular methodological interests and how those kind of came together the way that they seem to have come together.
So, for the benefit of the audience, my interests are methodology. So, I study just to very quickly, I study entrepreneurs in historical settings. That's usually my context, and my methods are you do econometrics analysis, but then I use historical methods to complement my econometric analysis. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's what I typically do in most of my work. The How I ended up there is quite frankly thanks to my advisors Brent and David. So one of the first projects that I ever worked on was, I was randomly assigned as an RA to Brent Goldfarb when I joined Maryland. Everybody was assigned as an RA to somebody as part of our scholarship. And he gave me a project in which he was working with Anastasia Zavialova from Rice, and Annie and Brent were looking at automobile industry racing. And Annie started the project, but then she had graduated. She was a junior faculty then, and they wanted someone else to work on the data. So I took on that project. And as I was working on that project, and as we were trying to come up with insights. I was trying to do some basic analysis. Um, one you know One lesson that I learned from that process, thanks to David Kirsch said, look, Sandeep, if you really want to make claims about your context, you need to really understand the context that you're in, right? You need to understand the context that you're studying. Now, the context that I was studying was the early American automobile industry. How do you understand that context? I had to turn to history. I didn't have a choice, right?
Yeah.
But then what David guided me on is, okay, so what does it mean to turn to history? And how do you take history seriously, right? And so it was a little bit the necessity of that project that got me interested in history, historical methods, and how do you take that context seriously. And quite literally, why did I turn to history? It is because I am given a number in my regression table. For me to interpret that coefficient, I need to understand what that setting is like.
Hmm.
To sensibly interpret that coefficient, I want to make sure that I'm not saying something that is totally ridiculous based on the setting. And for that, I need to understand the setting, and for that, I needed to use historical methods. So, the way I came into historical methods is actually to make my regression
Hmm.
table more powerful,
Hmm.
right? Like, is to really say, look, this regression table really does make sense because I can show you all these facts from the context that support this correlation that I'm showing. It's not just that I'm saying this my entire life is not dependent on p is less than 0.05. I can show you 10 other things that is true that suggest that p is that the correlation makes sense. So that is how I really got into it with that project on the early automobile industry. And that project led to a couple of other projects, as it usually does. When you collect data, you observe certain questions naturally arise. I had some other questions, and before you know it, my identity became a little bit doing historical work,
Yeah.
and then I naturally had interested in it. We had co-authors approach me. a couple of times. So eventually, I ended up doing a bunch of historical projects that I'm very happy about.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a great. So you're a mixed methods person.
Yeah, so that is what is mixed methods? When do we not mix methods? Is the whole philosophical discussion. So yes,
Yeah.
yes. So for colloquially speaking, yes, absolutely. I engage in I I look at I use econometric analysis, but then I defend my findings and I understand mechanisms using going delving deeper into the history.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, you are have been very successful, um, even at a relatively early stage of your career. So, for a lot of students coming out of school, those early publication attempts and the efforts with the journal review process are very impactful and change the way that they approach the phenomena and approach the craft of doing research. You kind of come out of school with a mindset about what it's like and how you're going to do it, and then you get impacted by your experiences. So, what was that like for you? Those early experiences, how do you think you've matured or changed as a researcher in the time that you've been doing this?
Right. So I would say that the big change that has happened for me is I think I take theory a lot more seriously now than
Mm-hmm.
before, right? So I was really, I still am very interested in the context. I still am very interested in the phenomena, right? That I'm studying, and for me, if it's an interesting phenomena, that's good enough. I mean, that was my attitude coming out of the PhD program, right? And
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, I got a little bit lucky with a couple of interesting phenomena that I was studying. They got published, so I'm like, okay, interesting phenomena is good enough, right? And and then I studied some other interesting phenomena that struggle in the review process, is still in the review process. You learn, and as you go through the review process and you get rejections and all these things, you start realizing, okay, the interest the what I thought was interesting phenomena was not just interesting phenomena, but it was also interesting from a theoretical perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? I only chose to see the phenomena being interesting, but there was an interesting theory perspective as well. That is why it was successful. When you just try to push papers that are just the, I mean, phenomena, only interesting phenomena, but not as much theory, there I have landed into some trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I have learned is, I'm not saying I'm good at it, I'm not saying I have become an expert at it, but something definitely I'm striving towards is having a better understanding of the theoretical, I guess the simplest way to say is the theoretical contribution
Mm-hmm.
very early on in the project. Like where does this fit conceptually, and why is it needed conceptually, right? Like forget the outcomes, everything, but why is this question even relevant conceptually? And that has become a little bit more, I have evolved a little bit more into that, right? And if you look at part of it, it could be a little bit my training as well, is that Maryland is amazing in phenomena based research. If you look at all the scholars there, they have studied so many phenomena. They are amazing in theory as well. But the thing is, I learned that they are amazing in theory a little later. You have a little bit blinder on, when you're, even when I was there, I was like, oh my god, all this phenomena. But it's so I think that theory, that's like thinking a little bit deeper about theory came to me a little later. I would say it happened almost uh, towards the end of my PhD career. In the early, that's when I started thinking a lot more seriously about theory.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting how when you're a grad student and a doctoral student in a program, you have views of your faculty and who they are and how good they are and what they do. And you kind of like you think you know something. And yet it's not really till you get out of school, I think, where you kind of gain the understanding that puts you in a better position to really
Right.
make those types of
Yeah,
judgments.
you realize how good they are. You realize how better they are than you imagined, because
Yes.
you thought they were just good at one thing and you just try to do that one thing, but then you realize no, no, they're good at A and B. You
Yeah.
need to do the B as well, which you may realize a little later.
Yeah.
It was
Well, it can be easy also, because there's everybody has their strengths and their
yeah,
weaknesses, the things they do well and the
yeah,
things they don't do so well. And I think as a grad student, as a doctoral student, you can be a little focused on the things that they don't do so well
yeah.
because those can be so irritating and impactful. But it's only once you get out and you look at it that you have a broader type of view. So I want to get to another area, and that's a popular topic in research these days, as evidenced by all the sessions at the Academy of Management. And this has to do with the use of AI in research. And so, have you made the move to use AI in different parts of your research? And if so, what have been your experiences, and do you have recommendations for students that are trying to that have one way of looking at it that they think seems to me sometimes they think it's going to be the solution to all their problems, but I don't think it's quite that simple. So, what from your experiences, what would you recommend to these students?
I will confess I don't do any advanced AI use. I know every academy, I'm astounded at all the advanced AI tools that people are using. I do use two AI tools fairly regularly. The advanced version of ChatGPT and Elicit, which is Elicit is used for literature review.
Mhm.
I find it to be a very, very useful tool to search for papers, etc. What I would say about AI is um, about something not to do. One worry I have, and I felt this especially sometimes when I was reading papers, is doing review for journals, is um, AI, as useful as it is not a replacement for reading papers.
Mhm.
I believe maybe I'm old fashioned, but it's still important to read papers, right? So there was a joke that most people don't read the papers, they just read the introduction. And then it became they don't read the introduction, they just read the
Absolutely.
abstract. And now it is becoming they don't even open the paper, they just take whatever the AI is telling to them the
Yeah.
paper apparently represents. And I think there is a little bit of a danger in that. So there are two issues there, the way I see it. One is you are liable to accidentally make claims that about the paper that simply is untrue, right? And you may say, well, I mean, what is wrong? Okay, so what if I accidentally make one such claim about one paper in the paper that I submit? Well, the problem could be that the reviewer of that paper could be the author of that uh,
Yeah.
paper that you're making wrong claims about, and there kind of goes your credibility. With that one mistake, your credibility is down. Everything else that you say, they may not even believe it. So, I mean, we can discuss whether it is fair or unfair, but I'm just saying, in my opinion, it's a very much a real possibility, right? So you may shoot yourself in the foot making claims that are just not true. Okay, so that is one thing. The second thing is, I I have been a person at least who has benefited from papers because I've had questions come out of the papers I've read, right?
Mhm.
The the papers that you read often, if you think something does not make sense, that's usually a research question, right? And that usually comes from reading the papers, not just taking the summary. So, what by not reading papers, you are foregoing a very strong mechanism for generating possible research questions that you can investigate.
Mhm.
And you, as a scholar, are poorer for it
Mhm.
because it will impact the quality of the research questions that you come up with. This is, again, my personal anecdotal experience. But so I think that those are the two reasons. One, you will misrepresent a research accidentally, and two, you will generate fewer questions, or the quality of the questions that you generate may possibly come down.
Yeah.
So I think that's why. So in AI, so mine is more of a warning, not what to do. I know a lot of people have suggestions on how they should use AI. I just want to take a step back and just make a little bit of a warning that this is one thing I'm a little afraid that, because we've had this discussion with students at Bocconi. Tulane does not have a PhD program. Bocconi had a PhD program. We had a lot of wonderful PhD students at Bocconi, and this was a discussion that we've had there, right? So you need to be very, because it's very tempting. I mean, it just gives you the answer. Why read it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's right there. Why read it? You don't get any brownie points for reading papers, but there is a cost to it. There is a cost.
Yep. Yep. So, Sandeep, at the beginning, I mentioned we're with you because you're going to be given a Karma webcast lecture on Friday, September the 5th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. So, can you give us a preview of what you're going to be talking about?
I'm going to talk about two things. One is the role of historical methods in strategy research. So, a lot of times we do econometric analysis and we get these wonderful tables from Stata. They're very good, very powerful. Why do we need to understand history? Because remember, most of the research that most of us are doing is in the past, right? Unless you're doing some sort of ethnographic study, or if you did a randomized controlled trial, which is a very small percentage of the research that we do, you are studying the past. And if you're studying the past, historians have come up with systematic ways of examining the past that can be very useful for you as you're conducting quantitative analysis. So I'm going to talk about historical methods, and that's one thing. And the second thing I'm going to talk about is, generally these papers tend to be abductive research, and I'll talk about what do I mean by abductive research, etc. The question becomes, how do you present this work? How do you present this study? Once you do historical methods, okay, I've used historical methods, I've done all of this, now how do I present all of this? And I'm going to talk about a framework. It's a paper that I'm working on with my co-authors. We call it the PEEBI framework, and the framework to present this analysis practically in a paper. So part one is, why do we need to do something, and part two is, how do I actually present it in a paper? So that's what I'm planning to talk about.
Well, that sounds like just the type of presentation that Karma supports and embraces as we do try to advance research methods. Sandeep Pillai from the Freeman School of Business, we'll look forward to your webcast Friday, September the 5th. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to
Pleasure,
seeing everyone.
pleasure chatting with you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See you.